You're listening to the Primal Happiness Show, a podcast dedicated to helping you thrive in this crazy modern world. Every Tuesday, we explore the nature of how our minds really work, what exactly the human animal requires to thrive, and how we can live happier and more fulfilling lives. If you're new here and haven't yet taken our free class, then there's no better place to get a jump start on reclaiming your primal happiness. It's where we'll guide you step by step through our antidote to today's modern world. Simply head on over to primalhappiness.co/antidote to get the free class and discover how to thrive without having to move to a planet that's not so crazy as ours. But now, your host, Leanne Brooke-Tyler.
Hello, my beautiful people. A huge warm welcome back to the show. In today's crazy modern world, men and women are living shallow, disconnected, and unfulfilling lives. So we created the path for those who are ready to reclaim their wildness and actualize their deepest gifts. Currently, we don't have any offerings for you to walk the path of waking the wild. If you want to be the first to hear of the next opening, do make sure you're in our Facebook group, facebook.com/group/primalhappiness, and get our Moonly newsletter, which comes out twice a month on the full moon and new moon, which is at primalhappiness.co/moonly. And just as a heads up, the next crucible that's likely to open will be Waking the Wild Sovereign in June. As ever, spaces will go fast, so if you're feeling the call to sovereignty and your inner king or queen archetype, then register your interest at primalhappiness.co/WTWS. And now on to this week's show. It's with Chris Lüttichau. Chris is the founder of Northern Drum Shamanic Centre, a UK-based educational organisation offering a renewed perspective on traditional shamanic and medicine teachings and a safe grounding from which to learn them, established in 1998. In this show, our second together, we spoke about the shamanic understanding of power animals, also known as animal spirit guides, what power actually is and what these animals are, other kinds of animal helpers, how to discover your power animal, and how it will benefit your life. This was a gorgeous show. Oh my goodness. I just love conversations with Chris. We went all sorts of places. I think you are going to love this episode. It really is. If you've heard things online, I don't know about, discover your power animal, and it seems this kind of cheesy or cultural appropriative way of speaking about something, I really invite you to listen to this show with an open heart and mind and discover what this could actually mean for you. I really do believe these things that we're speaking about are actually birthrights of every human, no matter the names we're giving them or the traditions, the many traditions that come from around the world. The things we spoke about in this show are deeply human. Now, let's dive in. Hello, Chris. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you. Real good to be here.
Oh, and just so magical and synchronistic. It feels as though there's been this real bookends between our first conversation and this conversation, that if I wasn't already so used to the way magic weaves so synchronistically, I'd be just like, this is ridiculous, but I'm used to it, so it is ridiculous, and it seems to be how life works. But as you'll remember, you and I, after we finished recording, I think it was, ended up with a bit of I'll show you my skull if you show me yours, didn't we? Yeah. And we were sharing each other our skull collections. And then we agreed to come back and record this episode on the topic of power animals. And then, as I was just sharing with you, and I'll give a bit more of I think what I'll do is I'll just share this part of the story, and then I can absolutely share the backstory of why the owl in particular is significant to me. But on Sunday, I went for a walk with the dogs. And as I was walking through this coppice of woods I've got a deep connection to, I had this realization, oh, that's interesting. I've not found a special feather for a while. And by special feather, I mean a kind of, often a bird of prey, some sort of feather has like some significance to me. is more of an unusual feather, because, living in the countryside, I see feathers all the time, but, those sort of feathers, have symbolism. So that's interesting. And then I had this thought, I wonder if it's because I've got such clarity that I'm on my path. I haven't kind of needed them. And then I had this sort of urge to like, actually, no, I'd really like a feather right now, just as a real sense of I am on my path, and also a kind of indication of that next step. So I rounded the corner, so probably like 2 minutes after I made that ask, I could not believe my eyes. When you sort of like do a double take, and there was a whole barn owl there laying kind of like sprawled out like this. And I'd obviously been there for some time, but I go past this particular area loads, but just there in perfect view for me, like just almost like gifted, like here you are. And I was just crying, like, I can't believe this. And I think I may have told you the backstory to the Buzzard, where the same thing happened when I received the Buzzard. I asked for a special feather as an indication of the next step on my path, and then found a whole dead buzzard. So it was just like, and that was almost exactly a year ago. I was just like, this is just incredible. So I took the owl home, and with real kind of reverence and love, I've been working with its body and its spirit, and it was quite decomposed. It had a lot of maggots, and it was quite decomposed. So there wasn't, I couldn't really retain huge aspects of it. But what I could do is, I've been cleaning the skull. And as I said, the reason I was late for the call is I wanted to go and get the skull to show you. So actually just taking it out of the cleaning fluid to rinse it off to show you. So still partway through the cleaning. And so yes, it's been incredibly synchronistic. That literally happened on Sunday. And then here you and I are talking about power animals. So, and as you beautifully suggested, when I said, how should we begin to talk about this topic? And you said, well, begin right there, share about your owl. So I would love to know what you've seen in that relates to your experience with working with power animals.
Yeah, so the fact that you had this experience leading up to our talk here, that is what is usually referred to as a sign or a confirmation, and that is one of the things that one of the ways we can get messages and support from animals is that they bring signs and omens, and then of course when that happens, then we look at what are the circumstances around this, and what kind of message do they bring. And very often the signs can be a confirmation, kind of like you were asking for that, that you are on your path, and the sign then is a way of saying, yes, go ahead, and this is right, and this is part of your purpose. So that is that's one of the ways animals communicate with us, and on a level of interconnectedness, this happens because everything ultimately is one. And therefore, it is possible for animals to be tuned into that oneness, that unified field. And out of that happens synchronicities and signs and omens. And animals in the spirit form, when they work with human beings, are usually referred to as power animals or animal spirit guides. And when we use the word power animal, it has to do with the fact that there is a concept on a spiritual level about power, and that human beings need power, and it's not power over anyone. This a kind of spiritual power that means that when we gather that kind of power, we are then able to connect to our true self. We are able to connect on a deeper level to spirit and to nature, and we are able to progress on our spiritual development. And so amongst, for example, indigenous people who work very closely with animals and animal spirits, this concept of power is very important because this is what lifts us up as human beings and brings us to the next level of our evolution. And the power animals play a role in that. They can help us. They can transfer a spiritual quality to us that then moves us on our journey. And it's seen that human beings have these invisible helpers from the spirit world in the form of animals, and that animal spirit helper that is with the child is what enables that child to survive childhood. For example, if children are playing football and the ball runs out on the road, a child doesn't necessarily look left and right before he or she runs after the ball. So the one of the basic roles of the power animal is a protector, a guardian. And that is then traditionally seen that that's what makes sure that the child can survive into adulthood.
I love this. I really do. You mentioned there quite a bit about power, and I'd like to spend a bit more time talking about this concept of power before we then dive even more deeply into power animals, because there's a way that we use, and you alluded to this, there's a way that we use the word power in modern culture, which often is more of a power over. And what I've experienced in my shamanic work is the word power in shamanic cultures is used very differently. And it's such an important, it's almost like the underlying, almost energetic of shamanic work. And you've definitely explained a bit about this already, but I'd love to hear if there's anything, and in some ways it is a bit like explain the meaning of life. I appreciate that. But I would love to hear anything else that you can offer in terms of a deeper understanding, definition of what is meant by power in this context. I think it'd be something that would really help ground this conversation in deeper level of understanding of the overall topic if we're able to have that definition.
Yes. Yes, you're right. This concept of power is very much a core idea amongst shamanic tribal people. And it has to do with that in order to manifest oneself fully and in order to awaken one's full potential, then it's seen that we need help. And that this concept of power basically means that when a young person in an indigenous culture goes out and seek their power animal, then by acquiring a power animal, they put themselves into a position, they put themselves on high ground. And that's what having that contact with the power animal is the difference between, for example, being a hunter and then being an exceptionally good hunter. The power that the power animal transfers to the young person is what makes the difference between being able to live life on a kind of average, ordinary level, and then to excel in life and become as strong as possible, and being able to reach full potential. And this also applies the concept of power when we talk about the spiritual development of a human being, that it takes spiritual power to go beyond the brain, go beyond the mind, and not to live just according to whatever random thought emerges in the mind. And then typically there's an emotional reaction to that. So in a way, you could say that if we live life that is mind-based, then we haven't awakened to the power and the magic of reality as it presents itself. If we awaken our heart, and if we awaken on a spiritual level, and to make this shift from living in the mind and then living from that place of spirit and heart, that requires power. It requires energy, and effort is needed. And that is part of the reason why amongst indigenous people that this concept of power is at the basis of their life. And it is also has to do with that they see that power in nature. They see that the spiritual power in the trees, the magic that make a seed sprout and grow into a tree, and they see spiritual power in animals and animals' ability to survive very difficult circumstances. And it also then applies to human beings, that we need a kind of power that is not about dominating anybody. It's not about dominance in any form. It is simply the power that awakens our true self, awakens our higher consciousness and our connection to the source. So that journey to go from living in an ordinary state of consciousness to expand one's consciousness and find out who we truly are, and understand something deeper about creation and life, that requires spiritual power. And that spiritual power you can seek. You can seek through prayer. You can seek it through ceremony and rituals. And traditionally, the power animal is the basic source of that spiritual power, of that energy, but also nature in general, the sun, water, going into the river, maybe into the cold water in the morning, having a dip. There also awakens some power, but in shamanism, you just like you have the skull. The skull has a certain energy, it has a certain vibration. So indigenous people would maybe say that skull has a power in it. It's a power object. And so in the journey of life, people would also then gather objects that had special meaning for them and evoked certain powers in them when they connected to them. And that is a practice that you can find in all spiritual tradition. In Christianity, it's the cross that is the main power object. And other traditions have a string of beads that they use that for prayer. And in shamanism, it's often connected to animals and a skull like you have there, or a tooth or a claw. And there is, when you are tuned into it, when you have awakened your sensitivity to energy, you can feel that there is a certain power in those objects. And by holding the objects and making a connection with them, there can be awakening of a similar power within oneself. So basically, power is that the foundation of everything that has to do with reaching an understanding of true self, of awakening, of raising consciousness. And that's why in shamanism, we continue to seek that spiritual power throughout our life. And ritual and the ceremony and prayer is very much about that.
Wow, that was a wonderful reply. Thank you. It's funny because at one point I was like, oh, I think I might ask Chris if he can give perhaps some synonyms for what we're using the word power here for. And I was just like, I don't think actually in modern culture there is a synonym for this. Like, it's just so outside of our perception, our worldview, that there just isn't a synonym that would actually do it justice. That's what occurred to me by the time you finished speaking. So I wanted to share that. I think that's really helpful to recognize, like, this can't exist in a kind of modern, disconnected worldview. It's just beyond it. Like what we're talking about here in terms of power exists beyond that. And it's kind of meta, really. It's almost like you need that power to be able to even access that worldview where power is available.
Yes,
interesting.
Yeah. No, it's true. I don't think we do have a word in the Western languages that really captures what we mean by this kind of spiritual power here. The word medicine is sometimes used, and of course, when we use that word, it's not in the traditional kind of Western meaning of medicine, but it's that in Siberia and Mongolia, where I have sometimes worked and brought groups over. They have a concept called a wind horse. So that other cultures, shamanic cultures, they have a word for this, but we need to kind of elaborate in order to understand it.
Yeah, very much so. So as you said, My Story of the Owl, I think, is a particularly nice example for us to work with that makes this more like tangible and practical than if we were having the conversation about kind of like this conceptual idea. But I think there is a way that we can use the owl as a kind of place to keep coming back to, because I'm sure listeners are going to have their own examples of this, either that have happened in the past that they perhaps weren't aware of, or will happen almost magically and synchronistically as soon as they've listened to this show. So if I may share a bit of the background to what happened literally the week before finding the owl, because I'd love to hear your sense of what I'm about to share, and I guess your thoughts on it, how you would then work with that, because I think there'll be so much in this example that will, again, open this up for listeners. So as I've showed you before, I'm training in shamanism, and it feels very just like a kind of natural flow to the path that I've been on over the years. It was kind of like a deepening of the path I was already on. In some ways, subconscious, like unintentionally almost, you know how these things happen. You sort of find yourself on a path like, how did I get here? And I was reading a book on shamanism last week. And what I'm about to say is so obvious. It'll be one of those things like, how would you have not known that before? But you know how you're your subconscious works to keep things out of your awareness until you're ready to really see them. This is a prime example of this. So I was reading this book, and it was emphasizing the need for shamans to work in the dark. And it was giving all these examples of different indigenous shamans and how they do certain aspects of their work as in kind of like as much darkness as possible, you know, so at night, only candles at most, you know, potentially blindfolded. And I was reading this and I was just like, oh gosh, that's like just not okay with me. And the reason for this is, since as long as I can remember, I can feel the emotion rising now, actually. I've had like a really, really big fear of the dark. Strangely, only inside. I can happily go for a walk outside in the pitch black, and I'm totally happy, safe, comfortable. And so I know this is something, you know, it's not a practical fear, if you know what I mean. It's not like a kind of like, there's some, like, you know, clearly I'm more likely to get hurt in some way walking in the dark outside than I would inside. But the same fear just isn't there. When I'm inside in the dark, it is like terror. If I end up in a situation where I've kind of accidentally ended up in a dark room, it's literally like pure panic rises. And I've kind of like, I mean, I used to literally sleep with the light full on. And if I'm alone, if my husband's away and I'm alone, I will actually often have to sleep with a lamp on in the bedroom. The rest of the time, I can usually sleep with a kind of, you know, light on somewhere in the house, so it's just sort of shining through. And it really hit me how this clearly is going to kind of like cap my ability to go deeper on this path, whilst I still have this just, you know, very alive fear of the dark. And it, again, firstly hit me like, this is so funny that I've only really just seen this, but it's just so obvious. But it just, again, it was like I wasn't ready to see it until I was ready to see that. And then I was really kind of like, okay, well, this is clearly something that I'm being called to work with next. I don't know how, but I'm choosing to, you know, this is something that is here now for me to work with. And obviously a lot of this idea of the, as you'll know, but, you know, for listeners, you know, a lot of this is around the sight that the shaman has. It's obviously very different to the sight that we typically use in the daytime as humans. And so it very much for me was like, yes, this is about, you know, being able to see in the dark and concepts like this. And so, of course, like literally 3 days later, finding the owl, it was just like, and then obviously having asked for a sign of my path, it was just like, well, yeah, to try and write that off as coincidence would be a bit much, bit of a stretch. So that's what I wanted to share with you. There was a real clear link between me, like this wasn't just any sign. This was so connected to that kind of like big realization. Like this for me, again, is going to probably my biggest fear. And so, yeah, it could not have been more of a gift and more of a sign that this is the direction to go in. So I'd love to hear any thoughts you have on any of that.
Yeah. Each animal has something that makes it unique and different from all the other animals. And that is what often is called the medicine of that particular animal. And as far as the owl goes, then, like you said, it sees in the dark, so it has vision sight. If you translate that, it means the owl power has to do with being able to perceive those things that are hidden from others, and intuition and instinctual knowing. All of those qualities are a part of the strength of the owl. And also, if you have met an owl in nature, obviously in
sorry to interrupt. You just reminded me of another amazing part of this story.
Yeah.
Shall I tell you now or shall I wait? I just
Go ahead.
forgot. There's actually, I can't even believe I forgot this. This is so magical. So on the same day as I had this whole realization about me and the dark and shamanism, I went for a walk, I say in the dark, and was walking. I went to visit my special tree, spent some time there, and this was all really alive for me. And then I heard an owl as I was at my tree. The owl proceeded to follow me all the way home from my tree right up to my house. It was obviously moving through the fields with me because it was literally wherever I was, it was right next to me. I couldn't see it clearly because I was in the dark, and it didn't leave me until I'd literally reached my house.
Yeah.
And so that happened the same day as I had that realization. I completely forgot about that part of the story. It's clearly important.
Yeah, that's that would be seen as a major shamanic sign. That's you then interpret it. And if something like that happened to me, I would say that, okay, you have that fear of the dark, and the owl comes as a spiritual power in your life, and in such a tangible way that you can't really question it. It is giving you this sign here that owl power can take you on a journey into healing that fear of the dark. And there are different kinds of animal spirit helpers, and one of them we call actually journey animals. And they are specifically related to what you are describing there. Animal spirit come into our life at a particular time and will guide us through the next part of our journey. And then often when we have achieved the insights and the kind of healing that we need at that point there, and that feels complete, then that animal spirit may leave. And then the other one can come in later when it's time for the next part of the journey. And that's called journey animals. And your example there is just a prime example of that, because what you describe is there is so strong, the fact that the animal, the owl, follows you. So it's like the mind cannot dismiss it and say, well, that was
I just happened to see it out just once. It was,
It's so strong that it's clear that the owl has brought you a message and offers you help. And when you have that kind of feel that you described there, and you don't have it when you go outside, and this is, of course, a different topic, but very often it is it's related to something that has happened in a past life, where something happened that just triggers that fear that is in us, in the DNA on a cellular level. And you can't rationalize it. You can't really do anything about it. It has to be released on that cellular level. And in this case here, it looks to me like the owl is saying it will take you on a journey into a healing of that.
Yeah. My goodness, this feels such a gift that we're having the opportunity to have this conversation. For me personally, this is a real gift. So thank you. I love what you said about the way journey animals come into our lives for a particular purpose and for a particular period, and then may leave us. Because I was thinking, I'd really felt that. I shared with you the story of the Buzzard and how, I can't remember if I shared this on the episode last time, so I'll recap for listeners. But when I was in this kind of like, do I choose to devote myself to the Shamanic Path? And I had a lot of resistance coming up around it. So I was kind of in this like, do I or don't I? Know that that's what I'm being called to do. I don't really want to do it. And I certainly don't want to do it yet. And I just kept having this kind of like constant messages and signs that I needed to do it. So I went out on a walk, followed my belly button, and had a clear intention. Like, if this is what I'm meant to do now, please may I have a clear sign And I probably did, again, for me, like feathers are the typical sign. So I probably actually did ask for a feather, that this is the time that I need to devote to shamanism. And I ended up walking down a dry stream bed that I never walk down. Like I'd literally, it's right next to my house, but I just never did. It was quite messy apart from anything. So it's not a convenient place to walk. It's about a good 15 feet down from the kind of like normal surface. So it's like a scramble to get down there. I had my 2 dogs with me. Like it's not somewhere you willingly choose to walk, but there was just strong kind of like just follow my belly button. That's where I went. And then I found this whole dead buzzard. And I was just like laughing, like, okay, I really get the message. And so a kind of follow up to that story. At that time, I really didn't have the skills, the understanding to really know how to work with the buzzard. Like I knew that I spoke to my shaman and he's saying, clearly is for you, you're right to bring it home. But I almost felt like I don't know what to do with it. So I placed it in, I put it on like a bed of bay leaves and put it into our shed with the intention to do something with it. But I just didn't have, it was just like, I don't have it in me to know what to do with it. But I did commit to shamanism. So I took the action I was being asked to take, but then I was kind of like, okay, and now I'm just going to wait and do nothing until I know what's next to do. And then the very same week, I was due to start my shamanic training. So literally this was the Sunday and I was due to start it on the Wednesday. I went back, opened the shed for the first time and thought I need to reconnect to the buzzard. I don't know what state it's going to be there now, but it's time to do it. And I pulled out the container that I had it in and I sort of tipped it and the skull, and it'd been a whole, literally just died when I found it, all covered in feathers, completely intact. When I picked it up, the skull, which is here, rolled out completely clean and just literally as it is. Detached, completely clean, here you are. And it was so it was just one of those I felt like it was this gift that was just even though were clueless, you had no clue what you were doing, it's okay, I'll show you, I'll guide you. And then I got to the shamanic training and was telling them the story of how I've ended up there, because I was still saying I'm kind of feel like I've been dragged here by spirit, honestly. I don't really feel like I've really consciously chosen it. And I told them the whole story. And buzzards started flying overhead. You could see through the hole in the yurt, and then there were buzzards overhead as I was telling the story. So that's
an amazing story, and it also goes to show that we are safe. There is spirit beings guarding us. We may not think so, and life may not appear like we are safe, but ultimately we can trust, because we are always being looked after. And when something like that happens, it is because there is a spiritual power behind that makes that happen, and it is a guidance. It's a confirmation, and there's a transformation in it also. So there's a healing in it also. So when you have that experience, it touches you on a deep inner level, on the level of the soul, and something can begin to heal, and something can begin to shift, and then we are on a journey of awakening, and that is basically one of the ways that animals can help us. In the shamanism, we say that there is even a pact, an agreement before we come here, before we are born, between us and the spirit animals, that they will help us in particular ways during this lifetime. And then part of the agreement, which we maybe sometimes we forget, is that we are supposed to do something for animals.
Yes.
and help them in whatever way we can, and treat them well, and treat them with respect, and acknowledge that they are sentient beings that have emotions, and they have feelings, and they are a life form just like we are.
Yeah, I so agree with that. I forgot the reason I brought up the Buzzard story. I think it was clearly something that really wanted to be shared in full. But the reason I brought it up was I really had that sense that the Buzzard journeyed with me for that year, and now it doesn't feel present in the same way that it did. And not in a, like, I feel complete with that. You know, I don't feel this sense of kind of, oh no, why has it left me? It feels, and what you've just said really has kind of shown me that it's the owl's time to journey with me, and the Buzzard now has kind of given me what was needed.
Yeah, so that's a real good example of journey animal spirit guides. They come, support us for a while, and then they go. Whereas we also have an animal spirit, a power animal, that usually is with us pretty much our entire lifetime. And that is, you could maybe say that that's our soul animal. In some traditions, they talk about the animal double that exists on a spiritual level, and that animal mirrors our soul. So if you study that animal, that is your power animal, your main power animal, you are really looking at a mirror of yourself. So if the animal, for example, is a hawk or a buzzard, then that person whose power animal is the hawk and the buzzard will be like that animal. You are a reflection of the animal. And the way, for example, you use your eyes, the way you turn your head is exactly like that animal. And if it's a hawk, then such a person maybe tends to like to be a little bit apart from others, and to look at things from a distance, and they like to have an overview of the situation, and they maybe don't engage as much as a person, for example, who has a mouse as the power animal, and where the mouse always touches everything and explores through being close to things. So the power animal mirrors who you are, and that is then called the animal double. And it is part of what we call, it's part of your medicine, and the strength of that animal are your strength, and you can activate them. And in that way, the animal also becomes your teacher. So you could say that there's both the function of the animal spirit, the power animal, to be a guide and a protector, but also it is also a mirror of your soul, basically. It has those two aspects to it.
Oh, I love how you've described that. I also love that we've kind of spoken about what a power animal isn't with the journey animals, but I think that was really important. I think that contrast, because I've seen that often there's a lot of, you know, like almost like a new age adoption of these kind of concepts. You know, people will talk about like spirit animals, power animals, animal helpers, and use all of it quite interchangeably. Like someone will say, you know, I saw a crow, therefore that's my power animal, when probably it was a journey animal. And I think it's really helpful that we've been able to distinguish that, so we can now, like, so it's not that, but it's this. And also, you know, that's a really helpful thing to know anyway. How would you advise that listeners begin to uncover, make contact with their power animal?
Well, very, effective and also very traditional method is to connect and find your power animal through dreams. It is widely used amongst shamanic tribal people, and dreaming is one of those methods, so to say, where your mind is not in control. So therefore, with dreams, it's seen traditional to be a very reliable method. If you ask at night before you go to sleep, you do a little meditation, little prayer, ask for your power animal to come and show itself in your dreams, and then you let yourself fall asleep. And it's a good idea then to have a notebook and a pen, so that when you have the dream, you can wake up and write it down immediately, so that you're sure you remember it. Because often we think, oh, I will remember that dream.
Yes.
And then in the morning, it's gone. So dreaming is a real good method for finding the animal. It may take some time. So you just continue asking night after night after night until the animal reveals itself. And then when it does, it is a very impactful way to find your power animal, because often when you meet it in the dream, there's also a transfer of spiritual power. Again, we're talking about power now, from the spirit animal to you in that dream state. And also in the dream state, you are very open to that. You're not guarded and protected, because the ordinary self, the mind, is not in control, and you are in that other state of consciousness that comes with when you have fallen asleep and you're dreaming. So that is an excellent way to work on finding your power animal. There is, of course, also the possibility to go to a shamanic basic workshop and learn from somebody who knows how to guide you, learn how to find the power animal through the drum journey, which is another way. Amongst tribal people, again, the vision quest is another one, where they would go out and fast and pray for 3 days and 3 nights or more in order to secure the support from an animal spirit. And this would happen at the puberty, and then that animal spirit then helps to make them strong. It's called power animal for a reason, So the contact with the power animal helps make you strong. It even is seen to strengthen your immune system, and it enables at whatever task you set out to do in life. So your occupation, the power animal can help you become better at that. And so that's how you can work with a power animal on then shamans, they work the power animals on to the next level. Animals for divination, for astral travel, and for heal, and even for shape-shifting. So there are 2 levels on which you can work with the power animals.
Thank you so much. I love that you brought dreams into this, because it feels to me, the more I've worked with dreams personally, and the more that I've guided others that are in our various programs to work with dreams, the more I realize, like, this is just one of those like completely untapped sources of almost like anything we could possibly imagine would want are contained in our dreams. To like the point now where I just think, how on earth did I manage to live life without this deep relationship with, I call it my night self, because to me it's like there's so much, it's like the dreams and so much more is possible with that deep intimacy with my night self. And I would suggest that, I don't know if you'd agree with this, like regardless whether you are planning to use dreams to make contact with your power animal, just to start to work with dreams, as you said, you know, setting intentions, keep a pad next to your bed, write down what arises, is such a powerful and deep practice anyway, and likely will make that unveiling, that revealing of your power animal so much more likely, so much more a kind of activating experience if you're already in that work of working with your dreams. I'd love to know your thoughts on that.
Yes, I think that is absolutely excellent way to open up on that spiritual level and to pursue that. There's so many benefits to that. And the reality is most people sleep maybe average, from 6, 7, 8 hours. So that's about a third of our life where we are unconscious. And in the spiritual tradition, including shamanism, also in yogis and others, they use that time of sleep as part of their spiritual practice. And they bring some consciousness into the dream state. And this way of working you were talking about is part of that, and also this method for asking, this method where you ask for the animal to reveal itself in a dream is another way of.
Yeah, wonderful. So I like perfectly, this whole conversation has been like just like so perfectly how can I say this? It's like everything you say is just like I can say, oh yes, that's exactly how it happened for me, because mine was revealed in a dream in exactly the way you're describing. And it was actually, you have some dreams where they're not a normal dream, even as they're happening. There's something kind of deeper going on or more magical even. And in this particular dream, I was actually being shown it as almost like two planes that things were happening on. And I was being shown other people's power animals first, and they were kind of showing up in almost like a kind of star constellation in blue lights, like sort of energy forms. And I was being shown all different, like how that worked, and so much of it I can't retain. But in this dream, I was being shown in like real detail different power animals and how they interacted, and why they were this kind of particular power animal and how much power they brought. And then when it got to mine, I think at the time I was probably okay with it. And I woke up and I was just like, oh, that's really not what I wanted. Because the power animal that was revealed for me was a dragon. And so I woke up and I was just like, okay, that would have been so much more convenient if it had been something I could easily wrap my head around, like a bear or a hawk or something. But the dream was exactly as you described it. It was like, I'm down, like it was so clear this is what's being revealed, and has left me with this almost kind of like a dragon. And the interesting thing was, there's been so many other signs that I've had over the years that it makes sense why it was a dragon. And yet there is this kind of slight sort of sense in me, like, I don't know, it feels a little bit too, I guess, ridiculous. Like a dragon, really? So I'd love to know your thoughts on any of what I've just shared.
Well, the dragon is the guardian of the treasures, so when you see the pictures of dragons, they're guarding the gold and the silver and the jewels. On a spiritual level, what that means is that when you have the dragon as your power animal, you are a guardian of the spiritual treasures, and you gather them and you protect them. And you can also become like a source where spiritual teachings are kept and shared. So that's part of the dragon medicine. So the dragon is an animal that is or has been seen on all continents that were inhabited in the old days. So in China, dragon plays a major role. Amongst the Vikings, dragons were extremely important, and likewise in South America and Mexico, dragon is part of the mythology, and in North America. So in the Celtic tradition also. So it is an animal that exists in another dimension. And in that dimension, it's seen to be as real as a deer or a fox is in this dimension here. And there's a reason why the ancient people, they all saw the same thing, and saw the dragon as a spiritual guardian of the land and a guardian of the treasures. So it's a good sign when you have in a way when you have resistance to the animal that is revealed to you, because it's clearly means that it's not your ego that has made it up.
Yes, that's true. I do tend to have resistance to everything that's for me. That tends to be the pattern.
Yeah. So it means basically that your vision sight has seen something that is true, and also that the fact that all the ancient people saw dragons, even though they didn't have a connection with each other. Those cultures that were not connected. That is a testimony to their vision sight, that these things and beings, they exist in another dimension.
Yeah, that really, I was funny enough, I was thinking about this just this week, that they have appeared in cultures across the whole world. And I was thinking, like, does that mean they did actually exist on the earthly realm? Or, as you're saying, kind of they exist in another realm that those who are open to it could still experience. And it may, possibly it doesn't matter which that was, but I love that you've, what you said there. Yeah, I can still feel there's resistance in me, but as you say, perhaps that's a good sign. I'm going to have to ask, because listeners are going to be like, why the hell didn't she ask him if I don't ask you? Would you mind sharing what your power animal is?
Well, I am one of those people who don't reveal my power animal.
Oh, okay.
It's absolutely fine to reveal what your power animal is, and there's nothing dangerous about it or wrong about it at all. So it's not for that reason. Some people say that because I'm born in the star sign Scorpio, that I'm
a bit like jealous and suspicious kind of thing. I completely respect magical secrets, so that's absolutely fine. But again, I know listeners have been wanting me to ask you, so at least I've asked you and you've given the answer. We're out of time, but this has been just such a pleasure, and again, for me personally, a real gift on many levels. So, such a huge appreciation for you, Chris. Thank you. It's been wonderful.
Well, thank you for having invited me. It's been a real joy to have this conversation here, and very inspiring for me too.
I think We're going to have to make this a regular thing. I don't think we're done, Chris. I think we've got so much more to talk about. So if you're cool with that, I think we're going to be back doing this again on another topic soon. But for now,
absolutely.
thank you.
Absolutely,
wonderful. Good. I'm very pleased to hear that. And again, where can listeners find out more about you and your wonderful work? Where's the best place for them to go?
I have a website, northerndrum.com. I have written a book called Calling Us Home that talks about power animals. It talks about intuition and other shamanic concepts. So that is one way to go a bit deeper if people like. And of course, I do workshops and introductory workshops also called the Shaman's Doorway, where we go and find our power animals, and we do other things in relation to how to strengthen the connection to power animals.
Wonderful. Yeah, well, I can't recommend you and your work enough. So I really encourage listeners to go and check all of that out. Well, thank you for now, Chris, and we'll be back again soon. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Good.
Oh my goodness. What a fabulous episode. Here are my takeaways. In shamanic traditions, it's seen that humans need power. It's not a power over, it's a spiritual power. And when we have that power, we have the ability to awaken and connect more deeply with our higher self, with nature, with our path, and to excel in life. Our power animals play an important role in this. They bring power that can guide us on our journey. I loved Chris's explanation of the journey animal versus the power animal. The journey animal might be symbolic or a guide for a specific part of our journey, but the power animal can be seen as an aspect of soul and is with us for life. Setting the intention to discover your power animal in your dreams is the best way to uncover it. Be patient, it may take time, but one way or another, what's meant for you will be revealed. If you'd like to get notes and links for everything we spoke about this week, do hop on over to the show notes, and they're at primalhappiness.co/episode 358. And if you don't want to miss out on next week's episode, head on over to Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or your app of choice. Hit that subscribe button, and that way you'll get each episode delivered automatically as soon as it comes out. Thank you so much for listening. You've been wonderful. Catch you again next Tuesday.